314 is where we are. So 314 says, the king of Dharma established the Vinaya for beings in general. And then 15 and 16 says, we can read these together. Whichever being transgresses, so goes against this Vinaya, then they have created faults. And the benefits of keeping this Vinaya is beneficial to all. Whoever keeps them, with or without formally taking them, will benefit from them. Whoever breaks, these vows, with or without formally taking them, there are faults as well involved. So should not be so surprising, to us. We have been looking at this unique way of understanding these vows, right? Anyway, let's see what the commentary says. Furthermore, having first generated bodhicitta for the sake of all sentient beings pervading space, having next gathered the two accumulations, meaning the accumulation of merit and wisdom, and finally having attained Buddhahood, the king of Dharma, in our case we're talking about Buddha Shakyamuni, who turned the wheel of Dharma, taught and established the virtue and non-virtue to be practiced and abandoned in accordance with the minds of tameable beings, beings who can be tamed, beings who can make progress. He taught this to all beings in general, like a skillful mother nourishes her child, a skillful doctor cures illnesses, or a skillful king establishes laws. The reason is stated in the Sutra of Angulimala. Do not do any non-virtue, complete the virtues, and fully tame your mind. That is the summarized essence of the Vinaya of all the Buddhists. And so here, Khenpo Kunpal quotes this very famous, this quote appears in several places, not just in the Sutra of Angulimala, but in the Sutra of Angulimala it says, do not do any non-virtue, complete the virtues, and fully tame your mind. And this is the summarized essence of the Vinaya of all the Buddhists. Sometimes this fourth line is, and this is taught by the Buddha. Not to do evil, but to engage in virtues and to fully tame your mind. This is the teachings of the Buddhists. So this summary has sometimes been also used to explain the three sets of vows that we observe. The first set of vows, do not create any non-virtue, is said to be primarily we can prevent ourselves from not creating non-virtue through observing the individual liberation vows. And of course, the most extensive of the individual liberation vows are the vows of the monastic vows of fully ordained monks and nuns. Then to complete the virtues, to engage in all the virtues, is said to be referring to the bodhisattva training, whereby we cultivate the 6 perfections, the 10 virtues, and all the infinite Buddha qualities. And finally, fully tame your mind is said to refer to the secret mantra level of training, where primarily we are taught, the nature of mind is revealed to us. We are shown the nature of mind and the nature of the obscurations of the mind, and then the practices that we engage in to powerfully dispel these obscurations, these obstacles. So this commentary doesn't explicitly, I think, again, Khenpo Kunpal comes from a more general, the way he comments on this, although he does, from time to time, show us, Kyobpa's unique interpretation. Being that, he wasn't a Drikung teacher, he was maybe writing this commentary for a more general audience. So then he didn't highlight too much the very unique Kyobpa emphasis. So if we were to elaborate on this commentary on statement 14, then we, would say, and you should not be surprised, that in fact, what 314 is say, the king of Dharma, Buddha Shakyamuni, has established this Vinaya, this individual liberation vows for all beings generally. That the causes of suffering and the causes of happiness that are shown in this collection of teachings, they apply equally to all. Not just monks and nuns. In fact, we can also say not just human beings. So this is statement 14. Then, 15 and 16 would be the obvious implication. And the obvious implication of statement 14 in the direction of, so therefore, whoever lives their lives, the further you are, the more your actions contradict what is taught with regards to the cause of happiness and the cause of suffering, then the more problems you will have. Here called fault. So 315 Khenpo Kunpal's commentary. Therefore, whichever being transgresses, whichever being breaks, goes against what is to be practiced, and abandoned, commits the fault of the respective aspects among the different aspects of natural or established misdeeds. Then the other implication going in the direction of keeping the vows and therefore creating happiness. 316. The benefits of keeping the vows also occur for everyone. Examples for Vajra Statements 315 and 316 are given in the basic Vinaya and so forth in sequence as follows. Earlier on, during the first eon, people started to hoard rice, and because of that, transgressions occurred. It is also told that 500 non-Buddhist saints had obscurations to their development of the 5 supernatural powers, the 5 clairvoyances, because of keeping extra possessions such as deer skins, vases, and so forth. So Khenpo Kunpal here says, so according to Buddhist telling of the ancient past, it says that during the first eon, meaning, when human beings first started to populate this particular world system, people did not hoard food. They did not keep surplus food. Whatever food that was produced was enough for everyone to have, to share whatever they need. And then things started to deteriorate when, through their power, in fact, this is kind of interesting, the way this story is told. But because they became more effective in cultivating the ground, surplus was created, and with surplus created, greed increased, and people started to hoard rice. So this telling of like what happened in the ancient past suggests a very interesting understanding of how people become greedy. In fact, very interesting to me here is saying the way this story is told is that, in fact, when people had less, they were less greedy. When people had less, they were more inclined to make sure that everybody else who did not have will have enough, and then they kind of looked out for each other. But then when people got good at growing more food, more than they need, then suddenly the idea of accumulating wealth, that means translating, right? Perishable goods into imperishable wealth started. So this example is given as the rationale behind why monks and nuns, if you follow the Vinaya strictly these days, although they're not completely followed, if you follow the Vinaya strictly, you do not store away food. Whatever was put in your bowl this morning when you went to receive food, you ate that, and that's it. You ate what you need for that day, that's it. Tomorrow, whatever you receive, you eat that for that day, that's it. Don't save up. So here is showing how, where that rule, that even in the first eon where there were no monks and nuns, this principle still applied. Whether you took the vow or not, when you start hoarding, when you start accumulating, then your greed will only increase. Now, that greed would increase, in such a sneaky way, and that we even think, oh, I'm not really attached. But in fact, that attachment is growing. That entanglement is growing. Sometimes I said, we have, many of us, myself especially, I would say, because what we own, is spread out, then we never really consider how greedy we are. Because it's all spread out, And then we think, oh, I'm not very attached, to any of these things. Well, it's because your attachment is kind of, spread out to so many things all around. So even if you lose one or two, you're like, it's okay. But it's not because you don't have, attachment or greed, but it's because it's kind of diffuse, hidden, you cannot see, You cannot see so easily. In fact, if we really kind of sit and look around, again, for me, like only one person, when I sit and I look around, and I see and I'm like, oh my gosh, me, one person, needs so many things. It's kind of scary, terrifying. Mhm. For one human being, supposedly, this human being needs this much stuff. Why do I need 2 cabinets for whatever nonsense I put in the cabinets? Now, of course, there is the logistics of a house. Well, you need cabinet here, cabinet here, cabinet here, cabinet there. But once we have cabinet here, cabinet here, cabinet there, what do? Most of us, not all of us. I've met people who are not necessarily like that. But most of us, oh, well, they're cabinets. Then they're cabinets to be filled. Well, then fill. Fill until you cannot fill, right? Then you have to go read a book, take a course, hire a cleaning coach to thin out. After thinning out, after a while, it gets refilled. So when we look around, it's like, oh, wow. We have to think about that, It is also told that 500 non-Buddhist saints had obscurations to their development of the 5 supernatural powers. It's not 5 clairvoyances. That's a little... Clairvoyance means to be able to see things that other people don't normally see, This is not just sight. It's called divine eye, divine ear, able to hear. There's 5 types of supernatural powers that can be cultivated through training the mind. It's not unique to Buddhists. Even in the Buddhist sources, it says people who train their mind, meditate a lot, may pick up some of these 5 types of supernatural powers. Ability to travel long distances very fast is one of them. Ability to hear things that are far, far away, see things that are far, far away. Ability to read people's thoughts. They say that these 500 non-Buddhist saints, they used to have these power, but then when they started to hoard deer skins, deer skins is what non-Buddhist Indian ascetics, they wear. So this is basically their clothing. They started to hoard deer skins, vases. Vases are, again, a Hindu ascetic, wear a deer skin, walks with a stick and have a vase, like a water bottle, like a Nalgene bottle or now clean canteen or whatever the most trendy ones, they started to have more and more. Then their powers disappeared. So they don't need to take or not take vows about these things. But once our greed increase, then it becomes obstacle. The 4 animals, the hill partridge and so forth, brought all the animals and humans of the country under the rules of the 5 vows of lay practitioners. And due to the benefits of keeping those, they were all reborn as gods in the realm of the 33 when they died. So this is a story about how in one kingdom, even the animals somehow were so inspired by the king, the example of the king, that all humans and non-humans gave rise to this great mind of we will observe the 5 vows. And because of that, they were all reborn in the gods of the realm of the heaven of the 33. For some animals, it's, you could say, biologically impossible to keep the 5 vows. Like killing, like I said, tigers, no matter Even if a tiger can become very compassionate, the tiger cannot make the choice of becoming vegetarian. But even that, it says, if the tiger is inspired to say, oh, I should not kill, even if it is practically impossible, but if they give rise to that thought, that is a virtue. Kaushika was amazed and uttered praises such as the following. It is due to those respectful and polite ones who are disciplined and stay in the forest. It was the hill partridge with pure conduct who taught this thoroughly to each of the four of the worldly beings. And so these four animals is talking about. It's usually depicted in many Tibetan, Bhutanese places. It's called the four harmonious siblings, or brothers, sisters, four of them. So there's the elephant, there's the monkey, there is the rabbit, and there's the hill partridge, a bird. So these four friends, met one day in the forest, and they were kind of trying to figure out, who is more senior. So by outer looks, the elephant seems, the most kind of dignified. So then, when they were trying to figure out who has more seniority, and the elephant said, "Oh, when I was when I found this tree here, the tree only reached my legs, pretty high. Only reached the extent of my legs." Something like that, the elephant said. Or maybe he said, they were only halfway up my leg, Then the monkey said, oh, when I saw this tree, it was only as high as, my leg. Oh, then the elephant said, oh, then you are more senior than me. Then the rabbit says, well, when I saw this tree, it was only up to my leg, And then the other two said, oh, you are more senior. And then the bird said, actually, when I first came here, there was no tree, Then I pooped out the seed that grew into this tree. And then all of them said, oh, you are the most senior. And so this is like, then they became very respectful to each other. This story also, there are some implications I think is interesting. They normally don't talk about these things, and at least usually when I hear these teachings. But for me, I think it also speaks of how sometimes we have this expression, good fences make good neighbors. So fences is a way to delineate, right? Where my property ends and your property begins. So here is talking about, these four were able to live harmoniously when it became clear, in terms of seniority, who was more. So there's something to be said about finding a place for everything and kind of knowing where we relate to each other, how we relate to each other. Of course, this thing can become, again, oppressive, right? Like we say, oh, you have to stay in your place, you have to stay in your place. But all of this, if we skillfully use them, then it's mutual respect. So these four, so it says here, because of the mutual respect of these four harmonious siblings, of these four animals, and they were all reborn into higher realms of existence after that life. So this is examples given by Khenpo Kunpal on 316 of the benefits that will come with or without, formally taking these vows. If we create the negative karma, then negative results come. If we create the positive karmas, positive result comes. So in that sense, going back to 2 or 3 classes back, I said, although in the Chinese tradition, in the Tibetan tradition, there is a certain taboo in terms of lay people looking at, materials related to the monastic vows. And more to the point is actually saying monastics should not teach non-monastics the details of those vows. And we already discussed, the right reasons for discouraging that. So we need to remember that, meaning the Buddha didn't want, lay people to walk around, judging monastics, because it's not easy. It's not easy, to live as a monastic. It's not easy on one level. And it definitely doesn't become busy when people are judgmental. But it is easy when we understand the liberating nature of these vows and we're inspired to live by these vows. But on a relative level, it can become challenging. So the last thing we need is people with a lot of opinions and judgment standing on the side, as they say, Monday night quarterbacking. So all these people who comment on, they should have played this game this way, that way, they've never picked up a football before. So we don't need that. Or something that we all can appreciate, you're driving, and the person sitting next to you is trying to tell you how to drive. Then you become very angry. You become very upset, Then maybe the person even say to you, why are you so angry when you drive, And then you're thinking, actually, no. When I drive, I'm not angry, When I'm alone driving, I never get angry, It's only when you sit next to me and start telling me how to drive that I get angry. So, no, I don't get angry when I drive, I get angry when I drive and you try to tell me how to drive, So that kind of, that's the reason. But then, now having considered that, on the other hand, if we take to heart what Kyobpa Rinpoche says about the true significance of the monks' vows, then it would seem that it would be beneficial for us even, right, non-monks and nuns, to know that, so that we can at least appreciate the underlying principle and take those principles to heart and to live to the best of our ability according to those principles. So today, maybe go take a look, if you have 3 of the same kind of thing, maybe you don't need 3, you can start by, you don't have to give away 2, start by giving away 1. Of course, you have to see your situation. I don't mean, you're like, I have 6 plates for dinner for guests, Now you're like, okay, I need to get rid of them now. But I did recently get rid of, because I looked at some of these things and I said, well, I used to have 6 people for dinner, but when was the last time I had 6 people over for dinner? It's been years. Okay. Get rid of them. Give them away. There's a charity in town for people who are just starting new homes and don't have much. So then this charity take home use things, to these families, refugee families who settle here. And so these are nice things, It's like, then of course, like the last few times when I kind of wanted to do that, I'm thinking, but then I never know, when I would have 6 people over for dinner. Despite, looking back and say for a few years, that has not happened. But you think, but maybe next week it will happen. When I finally, remove these things, I said, well, if it will happen next week, I'm sure I can go borrow. The 6 plates. In my case, it's possible. I'm not saying, you all should do this. Don't, But consider that there are many other situations in your life where you can apply that principle. That it's reasonable to apply that principle, and then pay attention to how light and freeing it feels, when you're like, okay, well, it wasn't that hard to give away. And then, so far, no, not yet, has not changed the status quo, 6 people coming over for dinner has not changed yet. And then you think, borrow 6 from other people, so much trouble. Yeah, it's not every day, every few years. Somebody else has 6 of whatever, But a word of advice: if you live in a household and the kitchen is not your department, don't you dare go mess it up. If you want some peace and harmony in your house. Likewise, if you don't live alone, if the garage is not your department, better not go try to give away and clean it up. Or the workshop or tools, it's not your department. For the sake of harmony, don't go clean up and give up things there, okay? But for those of you who live alone, then you can think, okay, really need that or not? Really did that or not? Okay, we will stop today here.